Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had a very informative as well as fruitful sessions. And I hope the coffee break was just the right thing after the last panel. Now, since the sessions run parallel to each other, let me just give you a bit of a quick snippet of what was discussed in each one of them. So in the parallel session one, we had success stories about, for example, the use of traditional methods to preserve foods and how to pass them on to the younger generation. We also had a talk on turning avocado waste into organic fertilizer. And one truth remains, though, that a lot of work still needs to be done to make the agriculture sector more friendly towards its female workforce. Now, in parallel session 2, we learned about a few technologies that, for example, allow low-cost cold storage and small-scale processing solutions during post-harvest. We also had about permit food rescue solutions that connects farmers to markets, or even the use of carbon dioxide to protect food, livelihoods, and dignity. All in all, I think this session served to demonstrate that the progress is being made in coming up with technologically driven approaches that advance food safety and loss reduction. And the potential for more hasn't been fully tapped in yet. Now, I'd like to take a moment to remind you that today marks the 12th International Food Safety Forum hosted by the IFC. And the reach of our food safety network is really impressive. We've hosted this event in Uzbekistan, Bangladesh, Cote d'Ivoire, Vietnam, Ukraine, Georgia, and Belarus. And of course, not forgetting that we had our first ever virtual Food Safety Forum in 2021 in Nairobi, Kenya. So before we begin the next session, I'd like to invite you to participate in a quiz, a quick quiz. I think we've sorted the QR issue, so the QR code is working. So we're going to put a QR code up, and if you could scan it. And at this juncture, we have a question for all of you. At which point in the food supply chain does food loss happen the most in developing countries, and particularly in Kenya? Is it during production? Is it all of the above? Is it at the distribution of the market? Is it during handling, or is it during production? So we'll give you 30 seconds to complete that question. And as you're doing that, I'll take this opportunity to invite Zanele, who's the Deputy Program Manager for a 500 million GAFSP private sector window that focuses on fundraising, donor engagement, and program management. Welcome, Zanele.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's feeling refreshed, has enough coffee. As Jackie said, my name is Zanele Hlachwayo, and I have the pleasure of moderating this really important session on innovative solutions for reducing food loss and waste. As Jackie mentioned, I'm the Deputy Program Manager for the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, GAFSP. And basically, we are involved in overseeing blended finance solutions that work to mobilize private capital into agriculture. I personally have the distinct honor and privilege every day to work with a diverse set of stakeholders, from investors to agribusinesses to farmer organizations across Africa and globally as well. And we're all working towards one shared goal, which is basically to ensure that food systems are inclusive, efficient, and resilient. To date, our facility has supported about 81 agribusiness investment projects across 27 countries, and we've deployed almost, as Jackie said, about $500 million in funds. We also support advisory projects as well, and at the moment we have about 88 advisory projects in our portfolio, and that across 33 countries, and that amounts to a value of around $44 million. These investments have reached over 1 million smallholder farmers globally, most of whom are here in Africa, and have enabled IFC to extend its reach to some of the most fragile markets. Why is this topic that we're going to discuss today so important? Well, it addresses one of the most urgent and yet solvable challenges facing our global food systems. Globally, it's estimated that 1/3 of all food produced is lost or wasted, even as hundreds of millions of people, as we know, go hungry every day. Here in Africa, unfortunately, it's with regret that I sort of emphasize that our situation is no better. Post-harvest losses amount to about 30 to 50% of production for some crops, and this translates to billions of dollars lost each year, not to mention the strain on water, land, energy, and livelihoods. But it's not all doom and gloom. This is also, I think, in my personal opinion, an area of immense opportunity. We can reduce food loss waste not only by ensuring that it improves environmental sustainability and efficiency, but also that it strengthens our value chain. So I do fundamentally believe, what we'll discuss today is important, and I hope that we'll all walk away with some key lessons, because I do think that as we unpack, develop, discuss innovative and scalable solutions to address this problem, then really what we're doing is turning it into an investment opportunity. So today, I'm really thrilled to have a panel where we'll hear from leaders from across certification, from policy, retail, food service, who are actively working, as I am, as I'm sure a lot of us in this room are, to working towards shifting this problem. So I'm delighted to invite the Powerhouse panel with diverse perspectives, from certification bodies, as I mentioned, and global think tanks to retailers and food service innovators. So please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our panelists. We'll start off with Ms. Alsalbi Mathe, who's the Technical Director for Foundation FSSC. Next up is Ms. Wambui Mbarire. She's the CEO of Retail Trade Association of Kenya, RETRAC. Joining us by video link, and I hope the connection works, is Mr. Zohab Hassan, who's the Division Manager, Quality Assurance at Metro Pakistan. Hi, Zohab. Welcome.
Yeah, hello, everyone.
And last but not least, Mr. Jacques Thinussen, who is the CEO of Kuku Foods, which we all know and hopefully love, which is KFC Kenya, and he's responsible for the Kenyan, Uganda, and Rwanda market. My apologies. I'm so sorry. I also missed one important person, which is Dr. Robert Mbeche, who's the Director of Food Program with the World Resources Institute. I will spend the rest of the session making it up to him. I'm deeply apologetic. Sorry about that. Okay, so why don't we kick off? And Dr. Robert, again, apologies for that. I am forever embarrassed, but I hope you'll forgive me. Why don't you start off maybe first with one line about who you are and your specific role, and then I do have a specific question for you. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, and not a problem at all. My name is Robert Mbeche. I lead the work on food for the World Resources Institute here in Africa, where we operate within, I think, 11 countries now. I think that's what you asked me. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful, thanks. So Robert, I think you're very well placed to provide us with a snapshot of the current global landscape on food loss and waste. Paint a picture for us. What are the major trends? What are the developments that you've seen over recent years? And where do you see the momentum building most strongly?
Thanks a lot for that question. And thanks for having me. Great pleasure indeed. Food loss and waste is something that hasn't received great attention before. but it's starting to receive attention now, probably over the last 10 years or so. We are talking about, of course, since 2015, we had SDG target 12 as goal 12, target 3, on reducing food loss and waste by 30%. But even then, there wasn't a lot of momentum at that stage, point in time. But as we speak now, we are talking about lots of commitment, but perhaps allow me to take a step back to say we are losing about a billion, we are losing food, about 1 billion tons of food globally, worth about $1 trillion. In Kenya, we are losing about 9 million tons of food. So that is a lot of food, which in terms of wealth, if you are talking about $1 trillion, that's a lot of money. Again, that is what we see on the surface. Below the surface, there is biodiversity loss, which about $700 billion of worth of nature loss that is happening. So that is a great deal. But as you asked, what has been happening? Of course, we are talking about SDG target 12.3. There has been lots of movement, especially over the last 10 years. In COP26, about 159 countries signed up to the Global Methane Pledge, seeking to reduce methane emissions, and most of those methane emissions are actually arising from food loss and waste, or from organic waste that is sitting in landfills. We have also seen lots of countries starting to work on their policies on food loss and waste, and so those are commitments. Kenya here did actually pass their policy last year. South Africa has been working on theirs. But also we have had a huge movement in private government relationship or commitments. In the UK, some of you may know of the Cortland Commitment, which led to about 27% reduction of food loss and waste, because the government worked with private companies to actually have voluntary agreements to reduce food loss and waste. But also we have now having private sector organizations having voluntary agreements. We call them food pacts. One of the most successful has been in Denmark, in the Netherlands, in the UK. We have one started in South Africa recently, and we're actually discussing with an organization called the Waste Resources Action Program in the UK to have one for the food sector in Kenya. So there's quite a lot of movement, but an area I would say we are not doing very well is on measurement to know where we are. Whenever we say 30%, we are not too sure. We are seeing very little investments in understanding how much we are losing, especially because this varies across the different value chains. So this is an area perhaps that we might want to put a lot of emphasis on. I also wish to mention, maybe lastly, that we have a number of countries now in NDC, second NDC, that have actually put food loss and waste. There are quite many countries that are putting waste, a lot of it organic waste in the NDCs, but fewer countries have actually come out to intend to work through food loss and waste as a way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which now stand roughly about 10%. Food loss and waste contributes about 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, our analysis a few years ago shows that if food loss and waste were a country, it would be the second largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So that tells you how big this issue is. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really insightful, and a key consideration, as you're saying, is what is that saying? What's not measured can't be. Help me, my English isn't that great, but I think it's the sentiment is that if you don't measure anything, then you can't deal with the challenge, and I think that's the point you're making. If I may, can I jump to Al Saudi, who I can barely see at the end of the row? If I can ask you maybe just again for a minute to introduce yourself, the work you do, and then we'll come to your question.
Great. Can you hear me? Yeah. So thank you, Zanelli, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elswie Mathieu. I'm the Technical Director for Foundation FSSC, and we are a scheme owner based out of the Netherlands, although our scheme is international.
Great. So we know that certification can be a key driver in the transition toward food loss and waste measurement, which is exactly what Dr. Robert was alluding to. The updated FSSC 22000 standard now includes a clause on food loss and waste. Can you tell us more about that decision and what it means for specific regions or segments like retail, processing, and others?
Yes, of course. And indeed, certification is a driver for change. And for us, as a scheme owner, we deliver trust and impact through our schemes. But it was not easy for us to get food loss and waste into our FSSC 22000 scheme because primarily our scheme is about food safety management, and food loss and waste is not a typical food safety topic. So we really had to work hard to convince our board and our stakeholders to include the requirement in our scheme, but we did it because for us it's really important, and it also contributes towards our vision of creating a better world. And then if you listen to the numbers, I think everybody agrees that food loss and waste is significant, and it's something that we all need to work on. So we thought, what is it that we can do as a scheme owner to help this situation? And for us, as I said, we deliver the impact through our scheme. And therefore, we believe that with the addition of this requirement to Vision 6, we will set organizations on the path towards improving global food security, reducing cost, as well as reducing the impact on the environment. And if you think about it, the reduction of food loss and waste also means improved process efficiencies, which in turn then means you've got more safe food for consumption. Now, since the commencement of version 6, which audit started in April last year, roughly 34,000 certified organizations globally and across multiple sectors in the supply chain has had to define and to start implementing a food loss and waste reduction strategy. And as part of management systems, one of the key concepts there is continuous improvement. So it also means this is not a one-off. This is something that companies will need to continue working on. However, we do not set the target and we do not define which measurement methodology companies need to use because all organizations are different and all of the local situations will also vary. We therefore leave it for them to define, but what is really important for us is that organizations really work on food loss and waste and that they action the reduction. And then collectively, that contributes towards the fight against food loss and waste and ultimately meaning more safe food. Now you also asked about which categories does it affect, which sectors. So the requirement applies to all of the sectors within the scope of the scheme, which includes food and feed manufacturing, transport and storage, retail and wholesale, and also catering and food service. The only exclusion we have currently is packaging manufacturing. But because this is also new, we've also developed a guidance document for our organizations to help them with the implementation of the requirement, but also for auditors to assist them in terms of what is it that they need to look at when they audit the food loss and waste requirement in our scheme. For those of you who are interested, our guidance document is available as a free download from our website. So therefore, the addition of food loss and waste to our scheme helped us as FSSC to broaden our footprint, but that is not really what it was about. This is about driving change, facilitating that change, and really making a difference. Also to support our organizations on their food loss and waste journey and to contribute towards the global SDGs.
Thanks. Thanks, Elsabi. And maybe this is a nice segue to bring in Zohab then, who represents a company that recently was certified under FSSC 22000. So Zohab, if you can come in maybe with a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll jump to your question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Zahid Jamil. I am heading Quality Assurance Department of Metro Pakistan, which is a German-based chain, wholesale food sale, food cash and carry business. So we are operating with 10 stores in Metro in Pakistan. So I'm responsible for all the backward integration, covering the supply chain, quality assurance, and the front end side of the business to meet the customer requirement. I'm with background of food science and technology, having additional educational background with supply chain management. So this area, this food loss and waste and backward integration and backward working is very close to my heart as well, along with my professional experience. In total, I'm carrying a 15-year of experience in the same sector. So yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thanks, Zahab. So let's jump straight to your question then. So, as an IFC client, you began addressing food loss waste in 2022. Can you share what your main challenges and also the opportunities you've seen have been as you've gone through this process? And also, under this certification, how has it impacted your retail operations?
Thank you for the question. And I think it's a very nice question because one of the biggest challenge which we faced at the start of this project from where we have to start. Because like Pakistan is also in the list of developing countries where the backward supply chain is not developed as like the developed countries, and being an international retailer, a cash and carry wholesale business, so we have to rely on the existing supply chain network which we have in Pakistan. Unfortunately, the situation of backward supply chain from farm to the market is not really good. And we have to rely on the wet market. So we thought, okay, what kind of contribution we can do with respect to our capability and the business what we are doing, because yeah, we are very small in comparison to the overall market size in Pakistan, and the contribution which we can do maybe will cost a lot, because if we improve the infrastructure that is going to be solely for the supply chain which we are going to develop for our businesses, it will have a lot of cost on the supply chain. For example, improving the trucks condition, improving the farm management practices, and then putting some cold chain system throughout the supply chain. But on the contrary, the market is operating at entirely different model, which is a traditional model without anything. So the first challenge which we saw that, okay, this is the backward supply chain where we can maybe not input so much, but yeah, this is the main challenge. The second challenge which we identified is the B2B customers or to business customers. So because of the market condition, so customers are not ready to pay extra price, because whatever we are going to invest to improve the backward supply chain and the quality of the product, then it is going to be a part of the cost of the product. At the same time, customers are getting a less price product from the wet market, and they are getting on the daily basis. So the business cycle which is developed at the moment is like that they are getting very fresh product from the wet market. They are not concerned about the food losses and wastage because they are not part of their system. But as a metro, what we can do? The third thing which we identified as that because of the low value, it has not a significant impact in terms of the business sensitivity, because we are calculating it based on the value, not on the quantity. So these are some of the main challenges which we identified during the process with the IFC. And when we look at the opportunity, so we thought that, okay, maybe we can review the backward supply chain, and where we can contribute, we should do it, and we should start taking baby steps. For example, improving our supplier landscape through trainings, then increasing the farmer share, bringing more farmers in our supply chain. Then second opportunity we identified, we can not maybe contribute in the overall picture, but maybe we can start with the top 5 products which are contributing significantly in terms of the quantity waste in our operations. So that's what we did. The third thing which we decided as an opportunity, okay, maybe the specifications which we have, we should review it based on the defects which are contributing towards the food loss and waste generation. So this was something which we identified as opportunities. And FSSC now with the additional requirement of food loss policy management and plan, I think we are getting real benefit from FSSC and also from the IFC project, which we initiated back in 2022, because we started our certification process in 2013 in Pakistan. Now our all 10 stores are certified on FSSC, and with this project and the requirements from the FSC standard, it is helping us to build a more stronger culture and putting all the things into the organization policy as well as objectives as well, because previously, as I shared, we mostly focused on the value, because in terms of the value, it was not significant in terms of our overall business. But when we dissected it and went into the details and look into the department level thing, then it was a significant amount. For example, I can share you that around approximately 8.5% of the quantity which we sell is the waste we generate. So now we have set targets to reduce, and we are actively working on the project which we executed with the help of IFC and their team.
Wonderful, thank you. That's a really interesting insight, and always lovely to hear from people who are implementing on the ground. Thanks, Ohab. So let's bring it back to Kenya, and I'd like to bring you, Wambui, in. Again, very quick, please, intro of yourself, and then we'll jump to your question.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wambui. I run what is called the Retail Trade Association of Kenya, which is a business membership organization for the retail sector. In Kenya speak, that means supermarkets normally, but we do have outside the supermarkets what we call specialty retail, which is everyone else who's doing fashion, apparel, books, optics, etc. And of course the eateries such as Jack sitting next to me, KFCs, Javas, etc. Over and above that, I pride myself on being prime Kenyan champion for food waste. Somebody in this room is going to stand up and say they are the champions for food loss. And I get a lot of reaction. There's somebody today who told me I'm not sitting next to you, because I like to ask, and I'll ask the room, how many people had lunch here? By show of hands.
Go on, raise your hands. How many people had lunch? Everyone, right?
How many people left some food on their plate?
So only 2 honest people in the room then.
Only 2 honest people in the room. Yeah. Oh, there's a third one at the back. One of the statistics that Robert didn't give us is that I think as of 2 years ago, we were at 99 kilos of food wasted on a Kenyan plate. 99. As of this year, that figure has moved to 145 kilos per person per year in a country that has people who sleep hungry. So every time you leave food on your plate, think about the person who that food would have been salvaged for, so that we start working towards food security by reducing food waste.
And to that question, and I'm almost reluctant to ask because you have painted quite a grim picture, but could you share how FLW has evolved in the country? Is it a situation that is deteriorating? Are we seeing more waste, as you've mentioned? Or is there a glimmer of hope that the situation may actually improve? And the second part of my question is, specifically in retail, as you define it, including KFC, etc., what have you observed, and where do you think, what kind of interventions are needed, and with what impact would they have?
As to whether it's reducing or increasing, difficult to tell. I think Robert did say we say 30%, but that's a 30% that has not been quantified. I think the weakest link in a discussion about food loss or food waste is a lack of data that can then tell you what, I think what you're trying to say is what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. Yeah. So
Thank you.
we have, I think, continuously referred to FAO data. And even with that, we ask ourselves, how was that data collected? So it's probably 4 or 5 years old now. So it's difficult to tell whether it's increasing or reducing. What we can say is there's an increase in the awareness of its existence, which means there are measures being taken to try and mitigate it. So, for example, I know as a country, with the support of FAO, we did a post-harvest losses management strategy last year. We're working with the Public Health Department to try and put within our laws the reality of food waste, so that we can create guidelines for directing food from what I call food surplus into human consumption vis-a-vis it becoming waste, because that would definitely be an element that would help reduce the waste. Then if we move to what are people doing about it, in the retail sector, I see a lot of partnerships growing. So there is linkages. So if I take fresh produce, for example, traditionally, I think we used a lot of brokers, and now I speak maybe to the supermarket sector, where you're waiting for somebody to bring for you. You don't know where it's come from. You don't know the process of it getting to you. But now we see partnerships directly with suppliers or farmers to try and improve on quality, improve on handling, improve on storage, improve on transportation, so that as it comes from farm to fork, there's less waste and less spoilage, meaning we are also going to be managing the quality of the product. I see a lot of systems being used towards looking to track produce on the shelf as well, so that, for example, if you have goods on the shelves, you're able to keep a track on nearing expiry, so that then you can do any of the things that can be done with that. You can repurpose it, you can discount it. Sometimes we return it to the supplier, and that's always a question mark of what happens after that. I've also seen that we have, we've also gone, as I mentioned, a bit into policy advocacy, and that has to do with now working with people like the Public Health Department to see how we can put in, as recently as yesterday, measures that allow us to track how much food we're losing. We say in the supermarket sector that as we look towards a bit of sustainability, we want to know how we can support our communities. So if you look at food waste, and I saw food banking in the room, correct myself. If we look at food surplus, because I said no one wants to eat food waste, so we must remind ourselves to be talking about food surplus until it becomes waste. How can we move that surplus to food banking, for example? How can we engage consumers? Because then that's another weak point, the understanding of consumers in terms of discounting. If you have a discount store, people think you're offloading stuff that is bad. So consumer mindset is something we're also working on to see if we can encourage people to buy foods that have been put on a marked down price because of short expiry. In most cases, it's purely an issue of quality, not safety. So we're not looking to encourage people to buy goods that are expired. We're looking to encourage them to buy goods that either are coming nearer to the end of their best buy, but are still good for human consumption.
Okay, thank you for that. And let's move on to Jacques. Just quick intro on your side, please, Jacques.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you, Zanele. My name is Jacques. I'm the group CEO for Kuku Foods. We own and operate 62 KFC restaurants currently across Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. And I think we've been on a fantastic journey in the business, which involves a lot of focus on food safety throughout the years, through our localization journey, and I'm excited to be here today. Thank you very much.
So, Jacques, reducing food loss and waste, we all agree, there's absolutely no refuting this, is good for the planet and it makes business sense. But it's not without its challenges. And I wondered from your experience at KFC, what have been the key barriers in food processing and service, and how do you overcome them, if you have?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, food loss comes in from different phases down the value chain, right? So first of all, from a restaurant point of view, how do we manage that? The actual wastage in the restaurant on a daily basis. But furthermore, I think for us, what we've seen from a challenge point of view along our journey has really been in terms of our localization journey, working with local suppliers, localizing our supply chain, right? The first challenge we faced when we started on this journey was really in terms of pricing. Okay, so because of a lot of food waste and maybe ineffective manufacturing processes, you saw that a lot of food waste was present in the manufacturing process of manufacturing our goods. This was costed in, obviously, as a cost of manufacturing, right? So when we started looking into how can it not make economical or viable sense for us to localize our supply chain, where we could then eventually pass that on to our consumers to make sure that our products are available and our brands accessible to most consumers in Kenya. We started realizing that food waste is a very, very big part of this, right? And because today is also, it's about the innovation around food safety, for anybody to supply us at the end of the day, you have to be FSSC 22000 certified, right? FSSC 22000 now also works around, talks to food loss and waste, but by implementing these processes, okay, and these certifications, automatically we started seeing our suppliers seeing the value in, it's not only on the safety side, but also on the process flow, how they produce these products, how effective they can produce it. And we started seeing that manufacturers came back and said to us, or producers came back and said, listen, Jacques, we can probably do this at a better price for you, right? So by improving food safety, by following and getting the certifications required, we saw a massive reduction in food waste, which resulted at manufacturing level or at processing level, which then resulted in a lower price to us, which we could then pass on to the consumer, which eventually then helped us to say, well, that means there's bigger trade zones for us to trade in. We are opening new consumer bases for ourselves to build more restaurants where we never thought we could. And in the end, I think, you know, it helps us to expand our business. It helped the manufacturers to improve their business, where a big win for us is a lot of them started exporting this year. They're exporting not only into East Africa, some of them into Mauritius, some of them into West Africa. So again, less waste, okay? Just by following the proper food safety systems that should be followed anyway to make sure that food is safe for all of us, right? The second thing I think is there's a bit of a disconnect from a challenge point of view, which I found through the time, and I'll be quick, I'm sorry, is there's a disconnect between the different stakeholders down the value chain, right? And I think Wambui and them have been doing quite a bit of work around connecting this better, where you find that retailers are not speaking necessarily to processors, who's not necessarily speaking to distributors, and who's not speaking to farmers. So nobody really knows what somebody wants. There's many of these events that I go to and I speak to somebody and they're like, we supply this, and I'm like, I didn't know that you even exist, right? And they say that they never knew that we needed this. I think there's an opportunity probably for better communication between stakeholders in terms of what needs to be produced, in which way does it need to produce, how can we use value addition to reduce waste to the minimal, and use the whole product instead of parts of the product, right? And when all the stakeholders get together, I think there's an opportunity. For instance, and I want to use one very simple example. For us, when we buy chips, there's raw potatoes that comes in, right? It's only a specific size potato, a specific grade of potato that's accepted. The farmer has different sizes, he has different grades of potatoes, and he also has the correct specification. The processor only accepts the correct specification, the correct grade, and then processes our chips and sells it on to us. What happens to the rest of it? Now you get to a point where the farmer doesn't want to sell even the correct spec because he wants to sell it to one person, right? So effective aggregation and then creating that value chain on top of that, because the processor should be in a conversation with Retrac or with somebody to say, where's the demand for the smaller potato? Where's the demand for the different grade potato from a processing point of view? Effectively, we can reduce food loss significantly by just talking to each other as well. Thank you.
And this is a first step. I mean, the same stakeholders you've mentioned are many of whom are in this room. So thank you for pointing that out. I'd love for us to move on to the next round of questions, with the caveat that we should treat it as a quick fire round, simply to allow for more questions from the audience and just more interaction. So let's come back to you, Dr. Robert. Can you share some of WRI's key initiatives, particularly around the 10 by 20 by 30 initiative? Also, we've heard today, we've spoken about avocados. Which fruits and vegetables in Kenya have the highest waste? And this isn't a name and shame type of exercise, but I think it goes a long way in sort of alluding to where sort of the toughest spots are in the value chain. And how is WRI targeting these supply chains?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. Yeah, WRI has been working collaboratively with many organizations, some of which are in the room here today, since 2013 on food loss and waste. And in particular, in 2016, working with FAO, UNEP, World Business Center for Sustainable Development, Wageningen, developed a food loss waste protocol. FLW protocol, if you type that, you can go into that website and there is a calculator there. And so that was one of those initial steps of trying to standardize the measurement of food loss and waste across different value chains, targeting mainly businesses. That protocol mainly targets businesses. So using the lessons from the development of that protocol and piloting it in different value chains in many countries, we then started working on a project called 10 by 20 by 30. Not the one you mentioned, I'll come back to that. This was working with 10 largest or large retail businesses across the world, mainly in Europe. Tesco's, those of you that are from Europe, for example, in South Africa, there will be Pick and Pay. So these 10 largest retailers. And what you just said, by simply measuring where the retailers were actually losing and identifying small opportunities, adjustment of sourcing, training of staff and all that, the retailers reduced losses from between 7% to about 30%. And so that was significant. And so based on the lessons of that, we have now launched a newer program called 10 by 20K by 30. This is working with agribusinesses that are farm gate facing, that are sourcing from smallholder farmers. And we started with 2 larger ones, ITC in India, Olam, that have operations for rice in Nigeria. They also have rice in India. And working with them using an approach we call measure, target, and then act. And you rightly pointed that. The measurement, some people say, oh, you are academic, but the measurement is very important. We are trying to simplify it and make it localized to an organization. You can actually do it yourself. We don't have to come. So we develop a tool together that then you can digitize and we train staff, and so that you can regularly measure your own operations across your supply chain. And on that basis, you are able then to determine what you can target to reduce, because you now know where the losses are potential happening, where you can act, and then act, do something about it. This might involve simple actions that, logistical operations, but it might also involve some investments, like you said, small potato sizes. We are in Kenya here, we have now 2 companies, one in potato, one in mango, but we have just begun to do that process. So we are calling it 10 because we are working with 10 large agribusinesses who are working with 20,000 farmers, that is 20K, to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030. But it's not going to be 50% because for each business, they have to determine what their target is. Some would say, we think based on what we are doing, we are going to work towards 10%. Another business might say 20%. So that is the program we are working on, 10 by 20K by 30. But in Kenya here, I honestly, as we said earlier, the data is not available. We know, for example, that in fruits and vegetables, the losses are where we have the highest, probably ranging between 30 and 60%. It depends on season. It depends on value chain. It depends on location, so it's quite varied. And Professor Jane that is here is supporting us from the University of Nairobi, is Mbuko trying to measure mango value chain losses across the country. We are working with other professionals or people that are helping us to measure for other value chains such as potato. We are working so that we can start to have measurement. We are not saying we don't entirely know, but the understanding is a bit sketchy and it's quite varied. But I must say that fresh fruits and vegetables is where we are losing the most. And again, when I say losing, we are talking about quantity. Another area we are not just talking about a lot is the quality loss. We are also working on fish value chain. And for example, you hear, tilapia, for example, when it starts to deteriorate, then people, take it and sell it to other markets which is again a food safety issue. So, I would say understanding is very limited on the actual, but we know that fruits and vegetables are losing the most. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Really, really interesting perspective. Alsabi, I'll jump to you and maybe also just encourage a short answer. What are the biggest opportunities and maybe some of the remaining challenges for scaling food loss and waste certification globally, but also through an African lens?
As with everything, I think there's always challenges. And one of the biggest hurdles, I think, is for organizations to make sense of all of the information that's out there and to understand how do they apply it to their own organization. And for this, I think the education and the training and creating of awareness is really key. I attended a 2-day masterclass with IFC, and sometimes I don't understand it either. It's like, it can be very complicated, but I think we need to not get stuck on how complicated it is. We need to see how can we apply it. I think that is the message, and therefore the education and the training is really important. The other challenge I see is in terms of reporting and understanding of data, because different companies use different measurement methodologies. There's different tools being used, and not all data is verified. So the accuracy and the reliability of the data is sometimes a little bit questionable. And as a lot of the colleagues has also mentioned, not all of the data is recent either. But I also think there are many opportunities for organizations to really make a difference in this space. It does require a different mindset, but I truly believe that once organizations understand and sees the benefits, that they will embrace it. The key for me is that people need to start and that they need to understand that every bit helps. Every bit of food loss and waste reduction. So even with you at home, with myself at home, with what's left on your plate, to be more conscious about it, and to realize that it is a journey and it will be different for every organization. But collectively, if everybody does their bit, it can be really, really powerful. The last point I want to make is about collaboration and working together. And I think it ties in with what Jacques said about communication. We need to talk to each other, we need to work together as industry sectors, but also on national and country level. And all of that, I think, will be instrumental in achieving bigger results and driving innovation.
Wonderful, thank you. That's a really poignant summary. Thank you for that. Let's go back to Pakistan. Zohab, sorry, you haven't been on screen, but would like to bring you back. And if you could also maybe just summarize some of the food loss waste solutions that you're implementing. Maybe give us one concrete example of what's worked and what you'd like to take forward. That would be great, please.
Yeah, sure. I like to share example of our food loss waste project, which we carried out and executed in our fruits and vegetable department in Metro Pakistan, where we set a very concrete targets to reduce the waste by 1% in terms of the quantity waste. And with the help of the IFC and with the help of the management of Metro Pakistan, we are able to achieve approximately 3.7% reduction against the target which we set initially, because we were a little bit skeptical that, okay, maybe we can set 1%, 2%. Would it be possible for us, keeping in view the given circumstances or not? So we are able to achieve a significant percentage of reduction in terms of the total time period which we have executed this project. But one thing which worked with us during this project, that we started with the small steps. As we discussed, and other participants and the speakers also shared the example that, okay, we have to take some steps. So we decided to take small steps, and we focused on only top 5 fruits and vegetable products which were contributing more. Then we integrated that program into our business and management needs with respect to the global target which we have from Metro Group, that, okay, with this project, how we can integrate our initiative and our program with the global project and how we can contribute that. That helped us to develop a culture and giving a little bit push from the management side, okay, that this is something which we have to do, and this is going to help us a lot. Then we set, like as I mentioned, the clear targets and the goals, which include short-term goals and the long-term goals. Short-term goals were the quick wins. I think some other organization can also take it as an example, that things which you can do on your part, for example, training of your supplier, training of your staff, then changing the specification, then maybe identifying the top contributing products. So these can be the small-term and just short-term objectives. With the long-term, it can be infrastructural improvement, collaboration with the authorities, collaboration with the stakeholders, where you work on the policy side, on a mass level development. And the last thing, I think I will really give an advice, which other speakers also shared, that collaborate with external agencies, which includes IFC, other partners, because what you are doing maybe can help, you can get a lot of help from other stakeholders, other entities to improve your existing project and scale it up and contribute more towards this global cause of food loss and waste reduction. So yeah, that is something which we learned, and some of the advices which I can pass on, keeping in view our experience with the project which we executed with IFC.
Wonderful, thank you, Zoe. Really, really interesting example. And maybe to take us home, or certainly to the Q&A, I'd maybe ask the same question to Wamboye and Jacques, just around if you could, in a similar vein, give us an example of innovative solutions you've seen, Jacques, in your business, Wamboye amongst retailers in Kenya and beyond, who've successfully reduced food loss and waste, and something we can all learn from.
Thank you. I think the first one would be the partnerships that we spoke to that are geared towards capacity building amongst the various players on the value chain. Then we've seen a lot of reuse and refill, both in liquids. We see a lot of milk, honey, so that you're only buying that which you require. Cereals as well, both in large outlets and in small outlets. There's a lot of reuse. There's a bit of use of data in tracking, as I said, towards expiry and ensuring you only have what you need on stock and getting it out when it shouldn't be there. We've seen a lot of repurposing in retail. So in the fresh sector, for example, we take out fruit and use it for juicing. A lot of our retailers then have food delis nowadays, so they also use that food to cook in their delis. So we are not necessarily throwing out overripe tomatoes. If we are able to sell them, we will, but normally we will then use it internally for our delis. The same thing with, we also see a lot of conversations between how do I phrase it without sounding odd? Conversations between people who can offtake food from the outlets, and I think that the only hindrance there has been the non-existence of policy. A lot of people have food that they would really want to donate. I keep saying, for example, IFC might have been paying for 200 people today, only 150 came, but the hotel will have cooked for 200. What happens to the 50? So conversations that can allow that food that is good for human consumption to be passed on to the next person are part of what I see as the trends and innovations that are coming around managing waste. Food surplus, managing food surplus.
Thank you. Jacques?
Thank you. I think from my side, as a business, we look at food waste from 5 different phases, right? So we start right at the farmer or the producer, right? So I think you asked for innovative ideas, and I think sometimes while innovation is fantastic, and we need to continue to think of new innovations and new ways to do things, there are already existing practices that would prevent food safe, which we can implement immediately while we don't have to wait for innovations. Farmers, we heard of Global Gap today, speaking about just globally accepted farming practices. By following these, waste would reduce at farm level. Okay, logistics and distribution, by making sure that the cold chain is upheld right through from farm to processor to distributor. Waste would be reduced there. We find that there's a lot of waste happening with broken cold chains, and these products eventually are wasted, effectively, right? We, at producing and manufacturer processor point of view, we spoke about this, how do we use the whole of a product and not only part of the product. I think Chris spoke about it earlier, about them creating, bioenergy from the avocado waste or surplus that they create. At the retailer level, for us, for instance, we've invested in technology over the last couple of years that helps us with forecasting. At restaurant level, at supply chain level, for ordering, for cooking, for preparation, we've managed to reduce our waste as a business from a value of 4% of our turnover to 0.2% of our turnover over the last 2 years. So it's a significant improvement. So there is definitely a play for technology there, where we find that generally in the restaurant sector, ordering, preparation, planning is manual and quite complicated. I would definitely recommend for somebody to invest in that. It makes a very, very big difference from a profitability point of view also, but wasting less food. And then from a customer, right? We find that we find ourselves, Wambuya said it today, maybe today it was paid for, 200 people and 150 arrive, and what happens to that food? We know that in these establishments it does not go to the staff. It's not, what do we do with that? And I don't think there is a answer, maybe also because it is There's food safety concerns around what do we do with it, how do we deal with it, but I think it is something that needs to be addressed quite urgently because there is definitely a purpose for it. There is other countries in the world where I have seen policies around it where it has reduced food waste. But I think also educating the customer, and from a retail point of view as well, being responsible in terms of how we serve our consumers and what we serve to them, okay? How we put together our menus. It's not as many things as possible on the menu. It's having as many things with as few possible ingredients on the menu to make sure that we reduce waste and increase output on this. And I'm not just talking about restaurant menus, it's about everything else as well. So I see the time is up, so I will stop right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Guys, this has been really a great conversation. I think we've gotten some really rich insights across retail, certification, food services, advocacy. I think it's a really rich conversation. I do want to check in with the organizers whether they can indulge us for 5 more minutes or if this is indeed a hard stop. 5 more minutes? Okay, well, in that case, can we open it up to the audience? If there are any questions across all the panelists, including Zohab in Pakistan, please feel free. The floor is yours. Yes, sir. And please tell us who you're directing your question to.
Thank you. I'm Wairo Nyangi from Nakuru. I'm in the dairy sector. I'm directing my comment to Beche. In Nakuru alone, in the dairy sector, it produced about 318 million liters of milk in the year 2023. We had a loss of 4%. That's about 12.7 million liters, worth about 606 million Kenya shillings. That's in Nakuru County alone. I've not heard none of you talking on the dairy sector, the losses that we're incurring in the dairy sector. What's happening? And I believe this is where you have the biggest loss possible.
Let's take one more question behind you. Yep. Is it 2 questions or 1? 2. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm in Kamsan Louise Ebenezer from Food Safety Hub, Ghana. So, for Kuku Foods, KFC, I know very well you have a lot of wastages because you are a lot of them, but I know you are very strict on holding times at the kitchen. Very, very strict. So mostly for the 9 pieces, for 2 hours, 1.5 hours, you have to discard them. How are you handling those products? So after a close of day, how do we handle those products? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wow, just a flourishing of questions. Please, the lady, yes, go ahead.
Yes, allow me to just, my name is Jane Ambuko from the University of Nairobi. I just want to add to, first of all, you asked the question. We say what gets measured gets managed.
There it is.
Yes.
What gets measured gets managed.
Yes, so that brings me to why I'm studying, is about the data. We can't even emphasize much than what Robert said, that there have been, you asked, have there been movements? Yes, there have been movements, but there have been blind movements, blind investments in food loss and waste reduction. That's why we're still talking about 30% since 2011, when the FAO report that we quote came. So we're still at 30% because we're not measuring, or the interventions we are making are not targeted, because Robert talked about target, measure, act, okay? So action must be guided by evidence. Where is the losses happening? Why is it happening? Which is the best intervention? Like he said, sometimes it's just changing what we do. So we need that, okay? The data, the evidence, to actually not only know where to intervene, but also know the impact of our intervention, so that we can say, 10 years later, have we moved? When we reach 2030, which is the SDG target, how much have we moved? There's no data, there's no evidence. So for me, my call to action for all of us. WRI is supporting us to do some work in fruit value chain and others, but we need more hands on the deck to address the data gaps. Thank you.
Very clear call to action. Thank you for that. Oh, wow. I'm afraid to get in trouble with Jackie, but Jackie, there are 3 more questions. Can we take them?
Super quick, thank you. Filippo from the World Food Programme. My question is for Ms. Wambui. One is, what is the enhancing environment for the food banking in Kenya? I would be very interested in that. And then the other one is around the interventions on fruit and vegetable losses from the colleague from the World Resources. What is the stage of development for producing fabrics from the skin of fruits and vegetables, like in other countries, for example? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd suggest we maybe take that round of questions and see if Jackie will be kind to us enough to take the next round. But if not, let's at least address this round. So why don't we start with you, Dr. Robert, because there was a question about milk in Nakuru and also the question just asked now.
Yes, thanks a lot for that question. And in Kenya, for example, we have prioritized 6 value chains based on what we think are the magnitudes of losses and based on the best available evidence. And of course, maize comes there very strongly, potato, mango, banana, avocado. So fruits, you can see there are quite a lot there. And for livestock products or for fisheries, then we are going for the small fisheries. But we have been having discussions seriously about milk, dairy. And the best available evidence tells us 15%. I'm surprised you are saying 4%, actually, which means that is much lower. But the reason why that has become greatly interesting is that dairy value chain has the lowest losses, but the highest in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Actually, the highest in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So we have had interest from some funders we are having conversations right now to reduce milk losses for the purpose, but you have introduced a new dimension that maybe we can investigate more about. But I think that's extremely important. It's something we follow up on. The fabrics from fruits and vegetables is not something that I understand very well. I've only just seen recently on TV about banana fiber being used to make, banana stems or something being used to make women, hair extension and all that. But it's something in circular economy that maybe we can follow up on, but it's not something we have done or worked on at the moment. Yes, thank you.
I'd be interested in that. Jacques, go ahead, please.
Thank you for the question. I'll be quick, and you're right. I mean, the food safety standards dictates that, we can't hold any hot product that goes below 60 degrees, any cold products above 4 degrees, right? So, yes, we do have wastage. But as I said earlier, I think just in my last comments was that we've invested heavily in digital automated forecasting. These models have helped us to significantly reduce any wastage in the restaurants, specifically by cooking exactly the right amount of product based on the data that's available, based on the trends over the last couple of months. These can be adjusted if anything is, if there's any special events that occurs on that specific day. So as I said, it reduced from around 4% to about 0.2%. So the solve, there were always systems in place. They were manual. People had to work it out themselves in terms of forecasting, but we fully automated that. So that has solved that issue. Okay.
So thank you, everyone. Oh, Wambui, please go ahead.
Yeah. I think the question was on how food banking is working. So where it has been successful is mainly on the farm gate. So the people there's food bank in Kenya, and I think there are 1 or 2 other people. What they do is get the surplus of, for example, export farmers, and redirect that to mainly school institutions, but it's purely worked on fresh produce. So what we're doing as an institution is trying to put in guidelines, which hopefully should be out by end of July, that would then allow retail itself to pass it on. It would be awesome if we can get to a place where, as you've said, other countries are doing it. The use of apps, for example, to alert people where that food is at would really help, but that hasn't gotten through. But we are hoping that once we do the guidelines, the government is in the process of reviewing our Public Health Act that didn't acknowledge food waste before. That would really help in putting everything in place.
Thanks, everyone. So we've been collectively given our marching orders, so no more questions, unfortunately. But if to maybe summarize for half a minute, I mean, I think it's been very clear from the conversation today that we as a continent are suffering the highest loss rates globally. And yet, ironically, we are one of the most entrepreneurial places, and we also have a lot of scalable solutions. And many of them are being piloted here. So we've heard today about how certification helps, retail reform helps, collaboration helps, but the key takeaway from me has been data. Data, 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 data. Let's measure, let's take ownership of what we do in our own homes. The likes of Robert, the University of Nairobi, hopefully they could also lead a very strong movement towards the measuring of what this loss is. And once measured, it can indeed be managed. So thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you very much, everyone.